Hello, this is the kubeadm office hours. Today is the 31st of March, 2021. I'm going to share the agenda document in chat. Please add your names to the list of participants and your potential agenda topics. Share my screen as well. Okay. So I see some new meeting participants. Do you want to present yourself to the group?
Hi, I'm Sandhya Dalavi, and this is first time I'm joining kubeadm. I'm familiar with the kubeadm, but not familiar with the code. So just joining here, and in future I will contribute.
Sorry, I didn't get the last part. What is your interest?
I said that I am familiar with the kubeadm, but I'm not familiar with the code. So I'm here to learn the process, and hopefully I'll contribute soon.
All right, thank you for joining. Anybody else? Okay, we can move to discussion topics. If you have any topics, please add them at the bottom here in this list. So today we have a rather important discussion, which is...
Before moving to discussion topic, I think that it is important to point out to Sandhya that in the SIG Cluster Lifecycle playlist there are some meetings which are code walkthrough or introduction for the newcomers. Maybe I will search for them and link them in the meeting agenda, so you can have you can look at past meeting for quickly catching up with the code base and the contribution process.
Thank you. I will reach out to you via direct message if I don't understand, but thank you. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, in the kubeadm repository, I think we have them at the bottom of the contributing AMD file. Just a second. We have these two instructional videos. One of them is by me, the other one is by Fabrizio. I don't think they are that much out of date at this point. We haven't changed that much, but I encourage people to watch them both before proceeding with the questions. But if you have any questions, I think the right place for that is the kubeadm Slack channel or the SIG Cluster Lifecycle Slack channel. You can also ping us directly there. But yes, we in these videos we basically explain to people that they should look for good first issues, help wanted tickets, and how to start. So hopefully they will be useful for you. Okay. Today we have a rather important topic, which is the removal of V1 Beta 1 and the addition of V1 Beta 3. The discussion from last time was that we can do this in 1.22, which is the next release. As a reminder, 1.21 is going to be released in 8 days. The release cycle for 1.22 is probably going to be, again, 3 months. There are discussions to move things to 4 months, which means 3 releases per year. But I don't see this happening for the next release. So we have to assume that it's going to be 3 months, which may or may not be enough time for all the features that accumulated for V1 Beta 3. As discussed before, the deprecated v1 beta 1 should be removed. I'm proposing that we do that in 122. Cluster API was arguably the biggest blocker for that due to some complexity around configuration management. Like, do we get any objections from people on this call?
Lubomir, one question. Did we put out an email to the mailing list to ensure that no one is consuming this API version?
We have to send it. We have to send it, but the deprecation happened in 1.15. So it was 6 releases ago. We are hoping that nobody's using it.
Yeah.
And
like, do we know if other installers in the wild are still relying on the old APIs, or did they all switch?
those that wrapped kubeadm, for instance, Minikube, KubeSpray, Kind, all of them moved to v1 beta 2. The only one was Cluster API due to the configuration complexities. And I guess the question is for Cluster API, can we safely remove this at this point?
Yes. So for Cluster API, we are fine. Now the problem is fixed, and the fix is also backporting on the v03 branch, and so we can remove it. I agree with Yassine. Let's send another reminder in the mailing list, but it's just an informative, because basically the deprecation process is started ages ago, and it will. If someone come up with, oh, I don't know nothing, it really so we are printing warnings. It is documented. We did everything possible, so we will try to accommodate every ask, but really we did everything in our capability to make it clear and not to disrupt it.
And I believe, like, you can still use kubeadm to do the conversion for your kubeadm config.
Yes, you can use a current kubeadm version to upgrade to v1 beta 2. This is always possible.
Yes, that
But,
makes it.
With one caveat, you cannot use 122 because 122 no longer knows about v1 beta 1. You have to use 121 or older version.
Yeah, that might be worth, like, specifying for in the email, so that at least folks know that it's a public service announcement and that it's the process to migrate.
Yes, I will summarize that. I wonder when we should do it. Maybe when we open the PR, we can also send the. I have basically a bit of an execution plan after that, so we can discuss this. So deprecation of v1 beta 2. Historically, we deprecated an API with the release of a new API, which means that when we introduce v1 alpha 3, we deprecated v1 alpha 2 immediately. The question is, do we want to deprecate v1 beta 2 immediately with the release of v1 beta 3? My vote is maybe not at the same release. Maybe we can delay this a little and for at least one release.
Agreed. We are not in hurry, and as soon as we have to implement conversion as when they are in the code base, then it will be not a problem to leave them there for one cycle more.
And I guess this gives more time to gather feedback on the new API before officially deprecating the old one.
Yes. the way the kubeadm API is, we are applying changes means that it's like it's set in stone. We reviews should happen on the v1 alpha, sorry, the v1 beta 3 cap changes and the PRs, and that's how we release it. It's out of the out of the door, and it's if we want to make changes, it has to happen in a new version. So, but yeah, we'll definitely gather feedback. That's how we do. Now, the question is about caps. Our cap situation is a bit messy because some of the features for API changes have individual caps. And we also have the umbrella graduate, the kubeadm config cap. I think what I was thinking today is, and I haven't looked if this is appropriate, we should just update this section here. So the cap has a section v1 beta 3. It already has some things. I honestly do not remember when we added this. Fabrizio, do you recall with the optional tag?
Oh, we go back 1 year ago, so 3 or 4 releases ago.
So is this still, should we still do this?
I think that generally this makes sense. So in the long term, my idea is that the kubeadmin component config should become a CRD. We can get there, and so we can get rid of the kubeadmin config map and use a proper CRD for our types. So we have conversion, validation, stuff like that. But this is a long process. In the meantime, what we have to do is to make our API types more CRD friendly. So that means that if someone like Cluster API is going to embed our types in some form into a CRD, it should not have a problem. And also we have to make our types more serialization friendly. So when we basically output our types to YAML, we should avoid to have empty field, defaults, stuff like that. So that the output should be the shorter possible, and so the user basically has to only set what he cares for. So he should not have been forced to set things just because they are defaults.
So this seems like something that is a good first step for this CRD migration. Yeah. I was wondering who added this. I see Rosti added it. I basically do not agree with this part at this point. It has become, we have shifted to add-ons in a different direction, but removing add-ons, it would be possible with another feature, which is to skip the add-on phases. And if you skip the add-on phases, you can then upgrade the same cluster, which will basically, the upgrade command will detect if you don't have the add-ons present, and it will skip it. I don't agree that we should make this explicit in the API. So Fabrizio, what do you think? I should remove this, maybe?
I don't know. I think that providing a clean way to avoid to install add-ons is more and more a frequent use case. So in my opinion, if possible, it should go in. Because if I think that, you know, now there is kuberouter that replace both kubeproxy and kubeDNS, sorry, and core DNS. There is also Antrea that from VMware that allows the same. So we have to make it possible. Then we should discuss in the CAP if we make it possible through skipping phase or through declaring explicitly, I want to not install add-on type none or something like that.
Agreed, especially that like from what I'm seeing, all the companies or users building on top of Kubernetes are rolling out their own add-ons management, because for each use case, you end up having some specific requirement that you cannot generalize. So agreed that we need to enable skipping any add-ons that get installed.
Yeah, long term, it feels that kubeadm will be completely add-on agnostic. We have to, but even if we use operators or some plugin method for add-ons, we still, the default cluster will still have to deploy them to make it easy for the basic user to install a cluster without caring that what is kubeproxy, what is core DNS, and so on. So it feels like the more advanced use case is the companies and the providers that need to skip the default add-ons. But I don't really like to include a specific field to skip a particular add-on. I think that we should just use the phases, and like it's already requested in this particular form to allow skip phases via the API, like that.
Yeah, but I think that let's try to keep. So we can discuss on implementation detail in a separated meeting. So let's try to define what are the themes that we want in the V1 Alpha 3 API. So one is, let me say, CRD friendless. The second one is skippable add-ons and skippable phases. And then we will discuss in which form.
Okay, I can leave this like so. I don't think it talks about the introduction of new fields. It's just a general way of opting add-ons. So skipping phases or response.
Yeah, we have only to rephrase it, removing the reference to the cluster add-on sub-project, because we are not yet creating a link with this project.
And kubeDNS
Yes.
as well. All right, I did a document. Let me quickly add a note here.
I will say that we should make add-on opt-out, because opt-in is by default enabled. And the same goes for phases.
Yes. Okay, I think this is sufficient. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a so this is the kubeadm cap. There's a separate cap, which is the removal of, sorry, my Zoom is bugging out. There's a separate cap that is the removal of the cluster status. And I need to find it. And I'm going to talk about deprecations and removals later, but so if we proceed to remove cluster status, I should we update this cap as well, or should we say in the kubeadm cap, the kubeadm config cap, that we are doing this action in the v1 beta 3 API and we can just close this issue? I think we should do that.
I have to check the impact on cluster API of this removal.
Didn't cluster API already move to the annotations?
No. I have to check what does mean to remove the annotation and see if this can be backported.
Oh, that's actually bad.
Yeah,
because
it is got out of my mind and I forgot. But let me check before. I take a note and let me check. I come back next week with an answer about this. But yeah, I agree that possibly we should remove cluster status.
it was, I think we deprecated in 118. So we considered it as like an implementation detail. We still gave it a GA deprecation timeline. But if copy cannot adapt for 122, this means that we should delay the removal until the next kubeadm API.
Technically, it is possible because we plan to get V1 Alpha 4 in June, if I'm not wrong, I have seen, and that means that we will get V1 Alpha 4 in time for V122. So technically, it is possible, but let me check what does it means.
Okay. Yeah, this is probably one of the tricky parts. Also, annotation. I think the annotation we have is alpha. I'm completely not clear how we graduate annotations from alpha to beta to GA, because every time you change the annotation key, you break users. There has to be a migration process.
So for this one, we might want to check what SIG Cloud Provider is doing. I know for the labels that they had a backfill strategy where they, depending on the version they had the beta and GA labels. So we might want to reuse the same thing for annotation.
So basically, they add in parallel multiple annotations, and they phase out the old annotations slowly.
Yeah, and I guess the tricky part here is they needed to care about downgrading. So and that's what that is one of the I guess cons of version in annotations and labels versus when you have fields.
Yeah, because annotations technically become an API. We have to think how we are going to migrate users. Okay, this is the coastal status. I still don't think we should make any updates to the cap. Even we can discuss it later, I guess. I think we don't need to document changes in the coaster status cap. Maybe let me check it quickly. How much time do we have? 30 minutes. does it talk about alpha? Yeah, I guess we have to, but this is like a separate process, because if we remove cluster status, the graduation of the API server advertise address notation becomes the responsibility of this CAP. So we shouldn't close the original issue, I guess. We should just remove the cluster status. And it requires more changes in kubeadm to clean it up. But it's like Fabrizio said, it seems doable if cluster API are okay with that. I'm hoping that other projects do not depend on it, actually. Like Cube Spray, I need to maybe check with them. That this is maybe like a separate email. But yeah, let's have a follow-up here. It's kind of tricky. So execution plan, I honestly wanted to break the whole basically addition of v1 beta 3 into multiple PRs. I wanted to remove the v1 beta 1 and add a copy of v1 beta 3 based on v1 beta 2 in the same PR. So this is one PR. We remove v1 beta 1, we add like a copy v1 beta 3. That's the base of the new API. And after that, we can start applying some of the high priority changes. Fabrizio, what do you think?
I agree. I kind of suggest that you break this into steps, one remove and the other adds, because those PR are usually big ones, but this is up to you. But I totally agree. We first have to have the v1 alpha 3 in place equal to v1 alpha 2. So the conversion part is really simple. And then you start modifying v1 alpha 3 and changing conversion. What is really key in this process is that we get the fuzzy conversion test in place as soon as possible, because these tests are the one that guarantees you that your conversion works.
Yeah, actually, I tried it yesterday, but it was one PR with 3 commits. I ended with 3 commits. The first one is the addition, the second one is the removal, and the third one was the adoption of unit tests, because our unit tests are very sketchy. We have we test like against v1 beta 1, and then we test against v1. We have to test against the conversion migration to v1 beta 3. So I am not sure if you are okay with just a single PR with 3 commits that I got.
I don't have problem. The only problem is that if the PR is too big, it takes time to review it, and also it takes time to address all the commits. So at the end, it takes longer. But it is up to you. For me, it is fine also a PR with 3 commits, because they are 3 clean separated actions, so it is acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have a third commit that adapts the unit test is even better, because if I combined the unit test updates into the API removal, for instance, it's going to be even more difficult to review. So I'm going to try it like that. 3 commits. We should merge this, and after that, we have a new API that is completely blank. It's a copy. So we should start iterating on additions and removals. And my proposal is basically do as many changes as possible in the release and punt the rest to like a future API. And I'm going to do all of these. I was thinking about, I mean, as long as we have reviewers, reviewer bandwidth, I was thinking of doing this in parallel, but it's very difficult because if somebody is adding something, it actually might be possible for some of the additions, but we have to think about it. Like, how do we do PR changes by separate contributors on the API? maybe we can have contributors help us with that.
I think that it's possible. I like the idea that we apply changes. So in separated PR, each change is a separated PR. It should be possible to have them in parallel. Maybe a little bit of a rebasing game when one merges, but this is doable. What I think that we should do is to define priority for the changes. So let's see, for instance, having add-ons configurable, we consider this P0, and that means that this is something that we really want. Everything else should be P1, and that means that we do our best to get in, but it's not. Maybe it goes in the next release. But at least we are clear in communicating what we want to achieve.
Yes, I agree. This is the next point, which is basically the list of open issues for the kubeadm repository that are tagged with the kind API change. I think we started accumulating that. Like you can see, some are very old. From 2017 is the oldest. 2019 as well. But basically, I went through these today. And since the priority important soon label, we use it only for a particular release, which is the pending release. I only use the two priorities, which are backlog and long term, which are technically lower priority. But P0, I think we can change the priority once the 122 cycle starts. We can enable the other two priorities, which are critical urgent and important soon, which are accordingly P0 and P1. Or should we, Fabrizio, do you think we should start using the priority labels wrongly and start labeling from now?
I think that it makes sense. It is a declaration of intent, and but it makes sense. What I was going to comment is that of this list, probably not all the requests are going to be implemented. I was looking, for instance, at the first one. The first one, I don't agree. It is something which is already possible. So.
Sure. Yeah. The list is, it's not the whole list, of course. It's just what we have. So we can change this priority to awaiting more evidence, for instance. We all agree that support skipping phases is the P0. I wanted to add this as basically as a link in the agenda to have it like that. Like, okay, this is the list. And the highest priority is like phases, skip phases.
I will put on the same. I know that having 2P0 is not ideal, but also CRD friendliness is something that we are talking since ages.
Yeah, but last time you also spoke about the fact that the fork of the kubeadm types will manage the plus optional tag. So I was not clear on that yet.
Okay, agreed. Let's put CRD friendliness as a P2, a P1.
Yeah, I mean, we can put it at P0. I just didn't know that it's a high priority.
No, let's put as P1. I agree with you. So it is not blocking for cluster API anymore. So we can handle as a lower priority.
CRD friendly, plus optional, and there is no issue for that yet to do. Okay. Have 23 minutes. This, maybe I should close this, make the kubeadm config easy to consume. We can talk about it later. Object beta is an interesting one. Do we need does Cluster API need object beta for customize and things like that?
We're not using it specifically to customize. We're using customize only for the config directory, which is basically the thing that bootstraps Cluster API or the providers. But that might be relevant for other folks that use kubeadm, that want kubeadm with customize.
Yes, I know that kind is used to use customize, but they dropped the idea. So it's only a problem for customized users over the kubeadm config. So I would say that Cluster API is not using customize over the kubeadm config.
No, it is not. But yeah, here the idea is to make our types more customized friendly, which is for the users. But I will say this is a P2 because it's something that came out in the past from Kind, if I remember well. But now it is not a problem anymore for Kind. And we don't have a user complaining about this. So let's say it is a P2. Nice to have. We can add object meta. And there is a reason, but there is not a real demand for this.
And the object beta umbrella kept by working group component standard is blocked. So there's no decision if we should make component configs in general have object meta.
And I guess like if we move to the CRD friendly option, that might also drag down this item and bring it.
Yeah. CRDs require object meta.
Should we create basically rename this ticket and say that this is CRD friendly and include both object meta and the CRD things inside?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. I have an argument that all the fields that are inside the kubeadm types, which are basically features that no longer work, including DNS type. We removed kubeDNS support entirely. And the other one is hyperkube. I would argue that this is also P0 because we want to remove the things that no longer work. What do you think?
So are you saying that if we have to clean up, let me say, unused things like DNS or hyperkube? The answer is yes. Cleaning up is something that we have to do. I have only some concern related to how we model DNS skipping, but it is an implementation detail.
What do you mean?
The discussion of before, how do we implement DNS skipping? By skipping phase or by being explicit, I want to skip the DNS or kube proxy? This is something that we have to figure out. I don't have an idea now, but I don't want to opt in the idea that we are only skipping phases, because I don't have yet to think to the problem. That's all. I want to think a little bit about it.
Yeah, you just pass skip phases, and the phase that you want to skip is add-ons / DNS, and that's it. Even if you pass a core DNS configuration images and things like that, it will be skipped.
Yeah, Lubomir, I agree that from the result is the same, but there is a problem with this approach, is that there is no way no direct way to understand if a cluster has add-ons or not, because we are not explicit. So if I'm a consumer of the kubeadm config and I wanted to understand if a cluster has core DNS or not, I have to check for the config map, okay, which is an indirect way, and also has some counter, let me say, indication that basically people installing their own version of the add-on, they cannot use the same name of the config map. So there are pros and cons, and I want to work around this and find a better solution. I don't have a solution now, but there are pros and cons with the approach of skipping phase, and we know that well. And so this is why I want to discuss in a separated moment.
Okay. Okay. This is going back to the skip add-ons problem. I see.
Yeah.
All right. This one, how much time? 17 minutes. Okay. This one, this is a very low priority in my opinion. This is related to basically tagging the API so that KWalk, if somebody uses the kubeadm API with a recent version of KWalk, if they print our API, some of the fields will be hidden, like fields that contain secrets. This is like a nice to have. That's why I have this priority as priority backlog. I would say this is like a P3.
Agreed. P2 or P3. Nice to have.
Okay. Okay. Cluster status, we already discussed it. It's a question mark, but potentially part of, it's a question mark with P0. P0 question mark, cluster status.
Let's keep it as a P1.
Okay. P1. Okay. This is, I mean, obviously, this is obvious. Removing the configuration is a P0. Skipping phases. Allow the override of the kubelet run directory. We currently hard code this to var run kubelet.
To be honest, this is P3. So there are a long demand from user to being able to customize kubeadm folders. But I still now I don't get strong reasons. So also on the other side, I like it, the installation to be consistent.
And it is possible to use a symbolic link as well. So there's already a pretty good workaround. Yeah. Okay. This is optional completely. Graduate patchboard. So should we add the patches to do on beta 3?
My answer is no, because having patches nested in a config file is weird. I prefer to have them separated in a folder.
We could support both files and inline patches.
Yeah, but I don't know. That's mean graduating the feature, stuff like that. If you want to keep this in the radar, for me, it is a P3. It's not. I'm not aware of people, of user asking or companies asking for this feature. So
I remember at VMware we had a internal issue work for that, and Nadir really wanted this.
okay, let's ping. Let's start with P3 and then we ping Nadir for see if there is a use cases. Then I'm happy to bump the priority.
Yeah, I think the use case was that if somebody is deploying some manifests of the control plane, there's no way for them to customize them declaratively. You have to have the files on disk. You have to have pass the flag to kubeadm, which is currently experimental patches, and it's very tricky with the Cloud Init Bootstrap.
Let's circle back with Nadir, because now there is a lot of changes going on the Bootstrap part. So in Cluster API, we still have post kubeadm commands that allows you to do hacky things, and people are using them. So
Okay, I'm going to pick Nadir after this meeting, see what if there is a status update. I recall that the internal issue that we have at VMware is still open, so let's see. Configurable sandbox pause image. Now this, let me try to summarize what's going on. So basically, the pause image situation is very entangled. CRI implementers eventually would be responsible for the pause image, and the kubelet will not care about the pause image. We currently pass a flag to the kubelet so that the kubelet does not, the kubelet garbage collector for images does not remove a specific version tag of the pause image. So that's like a kubelet feature. That's why we care for the kubelet, for the pause image in the kubelet. But long term, like I say, it's going to be a CRI implementer thing. For air gap scenarios on the side of kubeadm, we care about the pause image because users might want to pre-pull it. Now, should we completely stop managing the pause image, or should we make it configurable in the kubeadm API, which I guess will be only for pre-pull?
to be honest, I'm for staying out of the business of pause images, because as soon as we add it, I do expect the user asking us to configure the CRI. And that's mean we are going to the business of the different CRI, which is something that we don't have to.
So how are we going to configure the kubelet garbage collection then? And this is the flag that we pass to the kubelet. And if the user cannot configure it, we just pass a constant.
So we've had issues in the past for Cluster API regarding this. Uh, the the issue here is that if you have an OVA that works with a given Kubernetes version, but you want to still want to have like a different pause image, you end up having to build another OVA if you want to specify a new pause image. Because today, if you use, for example, containerd, you have to configure that through the Tomer file. So ideally, we should be able, like, I don't know if we can do that through the extra args that we have. But if like that seems to be at least a legitimate use case.
Yeah, you can do this with extra arcs. The kubelet configuration, I don't think it supports the pause image yet. Maybe it does, But in any case, if this is moving on the side of the CRI implementer, then the CRI implementer configuration has to be baked in the OVA anyway. So it's outside of the scope of kubeadm. If they want to switch the pulse image. Like for containerd, for instance, if you want to change a particular node to use a different pulse image for containerd, you have to change the containerd config in the OVA and create a new VM.
That's fair.
Yeah, let's rally on the issue, but the key point for me is that kubeadmin should not configure any CRI. What we can do is to configure kubelet, but we already have option to allow the user to configure kubelet, so I don't see this as a problem.
And ideally, if you ask me, the CRI socket should provide information about the pulse image. The kubelet should consume this information and know which image not to garbage collect.
This is the best solution.
We're trying to work around problems that are in the kubelet, basically. Similar problem is the C group driver situation. Hypercube, we already covered that. Maybe we should do this in beta 3. This is the umbrella view on beta 3. Object meta, we discussed the handling of extra arcs. We have 6 minutes. So this one is that if you pass, I think we have an example here. If you pass extra arcs that are the same, kubeadm does not support that, and it's going to take the latest, like we unify them. There was a proposal to use not use a Go language map, the default map object, but use something that is a map with, I think the multi-key, I forgot the name of that. Basically, let me see. I think I gave an example somewhere. I think there should be a stack overflow. Or this one, like we can have like a structure that is contains a list of these argument structures instead of the map string. So what do you think about this? It's backwalk. We haven't seen that many requests. I really want to get this out of the basically out of our problem space. It has been open for a very long time.
I think that is doable. I don't see big problem. I'm trying to figure out if there are some other API which do in Kubernetes lands that does something similar to use as an example, but at the moment I don't remember.
Yeah,
I have to, let's do a little bit of research before deciding how to model it.
I mean, yeah, it can have a separate cap even, no problem. But it just I will see. I will see if it's very low priority. I will see if I can write something up, even if a Google Doc, not a cap, but Google.
We can also ask to API machinery folks what they suggest for solving this problem.
Yes. Okay, switching etcd to etcdsa keys. Currently, we have fairly low demand, and to my understanding, etcdsa is kind of tricky in terms of when you start licensing software in a company. etcdsa might be problematic for you. So I asked some folks around, and enabling this by default might be tricky. So actually, I would say we should just punt this item for now. So I'm going to give it a P4, which is awaiting more evidence. Currently, it's alpha. It's an alpha feature gate. If we enable it as actually, why is this even an API change? Let me check. I guess we still want to make this optional. So it's if it's optional, it has to be in the API. So I'm going to ask Nadir about this as well. I don't know what is. I mean, if somebody has opinions, like you can add them now.
So for things like STIG and other regulations, the only constraint that we have, I think, is like are the ciphers that we use.
You're saying that even if we do this, we have to allow the users to specify the cipher for HCDSA?
Potentially, yes, because like uh, at least my understanding is that from the constraints that we have, we probably need the ciphers. At least we need to have to be able to bake in an approved list of ciphers. But I guess this is already supported in kubeadm today.
No, we do not support actually the list of ciphers. It's just everything is hard coded.
Uh, I believe we're using it downstream, but in Cluster API.
Well, no, I don't think we have. There's no way. There's no way to specify the ciphers the same way you can pass them to the Kubernetes or API server. If that's what you mean.
Mm, let me double check. I'll get back to you on that. But I'm pretty sure we have we're using that downstream. So it's either we're not aware of something or uh, interesting.
We are out of time, by the way. I'm going to assign myself as asking about this, and also I'm going to ask what was the other item? Patches to config. Okay, I'm going to ask some folks that maybe know more about this. The last item we had is image pool policy. I'm going to add this as backlog, and I don't think we have anything else. I mean, if you have anything else, we can discuss it. Please open a ticket for the kubeadm repository. And I'm going to add this as P3 as well. So we are,
Thank you, Lubomir.
no problem. We are out of time. And I'm going to stop the recording of the meeting. You can continue to the Cluster API meeting. And thanks. See you again in a couple of weeks. Bye.